Hi folks, welcome back again to Mr. Times Classics channel. In this episode I'm going to be going through the key events of the Battle of Thermopylae, and as has been requested, I'll be showing some gameplay footage as well. Let me know in the comments if you enjoy this type of video, and as ever, do consider dropping a like and subscribe. So the prologue of Assassin's Creed Odyssey places you as the legendary Spartan king Leonidas, in the midst of the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC. This is a fantastic way to start the game in one of history's most famous conflicts, but before I get into the details of the battle, I first need to give you some context, so I'm going to quickly cut to the site outside of this conflict. So I'm now at the site of the Battle of Thermopylae, which took place in this area of northern Greece, known as Malis. But why were the Greeks fighting the Persians, and why here? Well, the Persian Empire, which is much of the modern day Middle East, sought to invade mainland Greece. It tried once before under their king Darius between 492 and 490 BC, but they were repelled by the Greeks. 10 years later, between 480 to 479, Darius' son Xerxes tried to invade once more. The Persian army saw no resistance as they made their way through northern Greece towards Thermopylae due to Xerxes' massive army, which was estimated to be in the hundreds of thousands. According to the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, it was even in the millions. By contrast, the Greek fighting force at Thermopylae was very small, around 7,000 men, including a force of 300 elite Spartan soldiers, led by their king Leonidas. So the Greek strategy was to block the Persian advance, and they chose this, the narrow pass of Thermopylae, which was an ideal defensive location due to its geography. It's a narrow coastal path between the mountains on this side and the sea over here. This allows only a small amount of troops to fight at any given time. Along the path there are three notable points where the mountain constricts, and this gets the nickname the Gates, and due to these hot springs being nearby, they then get the nickname the Hot Gates. Even where the battlefield widens out, it's still heavily restricted by the springs and the marshes over to the left, the mountain, and obviously the sheer drop off the cliff. So now we're back to the action. When the fighting first commenced, the Spartans and their allies put up a great fight for the first 3 days, using their superior fighting skills and the advantage of the terrain, which negated the Persians' numerical superiority. The heavily armoured Greek soldiers, or hoplites, were particularly effective in close combat. The Spartans fought in a phalanx formation, which is essentially a dense rectangle, where hoplites would stand shoulder to shoulder. They had their large circular shields to protect themselves, and when held up, they would protect the neck of the man to their left. I'm obviously not in formation here, but when they were in formation, the front line engaged with the enemy with long spears, thrusting from behind with their shields. When it came to more close quarters contact, they would then use the sword and shield. The game is still going with a spear here, and I guess it just looks more impressive in this prologue. The Spartans were legendary in the Greek world for the discipline and skill of their soldiers. One of their leading principles was that they would never surrender, and would thus either come back with their shields or on them. This was actually Spartan law, gaining a beautiful death, a kalos thanatos, rather than running away. There's a great story by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who tells us that a Persian spy came to the Spartan camp before the battle, and he was shocked to see the men naked and combing their hair, something seemingly unusual in the face of almost certain death. To the Spartans, they are preparing themselves, ready to face death with dignity, but also show defiance and fearlessness in front of an enemy spy, who they apparently knew was there, but didn't even bother to capture. So in contrast to the Spartans, the Persians used their elite infantry unit known as the Immortals at Thermopylae. This was a force of 10,000 soldiers, armed with spears, bows, and short swords, as you can kind of see some of them fighting with here. They would also carry wicker shields and wore more elaborate uniforms. So you can see that I'm fighting against an Immortal now in this 1v1 section. The game has dramatised his depiction as he fights with an axe rather than a sword or a spear, but nonetheless, these guys were a real formidable force. They were really mobile and versatile, but their lighter weaponry was no match for the Greek phalanx at Thermopylae, and the narrow pass, as I've said, has negated their superior mobility, and they couldn't break a well-shielded Greek defence. They were called Immortals because any soldier killed or incapacitated was immediately replaced to keep the unit at 10,000 strong. Despite their prowess, the Spartans and the rest of their Greek allies fighting with them were eventually betrayed by a man called Ephialtes, who tells Xerxes of a goat path that goes around the mountain, which allowed the Persians to surround the Greeks. On learning of their betrayal and that they were to be surrounded, King Leonidas dismisses most of the allied troops, but he and his 300 Spartans, along with a small number of remaining Thespians and Thebans, chose to stay and fight to the death. They made a valiant last stand, but they were all eventually killed. This is why the battle is sometimes referred to as the Battle of 300, because 300 Spartan elite forces remained. But this refers only to the last stand, not the whole battle, and even then, they're supported by a small number of allies. So we may ask why only 300 Spartans were fighting, why not the whole army? And there are several reasons for this. Firstly, at the time of the battle, the Spartans were observing a major religious festival called the Carneia, which was held in honour of the god Apollo. During this festival, it was forbidden for the Spartans to go to war. Similarly, the Olympic Games were being held around the same time, which also involved a general truce across the Greek world. Because of these religious obligations, the Spartans were initially reluctant to send a larger army. However, Leonidas was able to convince the Spartan authorities to allow him to take a smaller force, so the 300 men who accompanied him were all part of his personal bodyguard. Also, the Spartans were always cautious about sending too many soldiers away from their homeland because they relied heavily on a Helot population. This was an enslaved serf class, and they used them for labour. There was always a risk of a Helot uprising and revolt. So the Spartans and the rest of the Greeks lose here at Thermopylae, but they succeeded in two key ways. One, they delayed the Persians, allowing the rest of the Greek world to prepare themselves ahead of the rest of the Persian invasion. And two, for the Spartans, they created a legend about themselves that would never die. Their tenacity, bravery, and unwavering nerve are all still ideas that we attach to the word Spartan today. There's a dedication to the Spartans here at Thermopylae. Previously, there'd been a stone statue of a lion, commemorating the battle, but this doesn't survive to us anymore. Instead, there's a large bronze statue of King Leonidas, depicting the king in full armour, holding a spear and a shield ready for battle. At the base of the statue is the inscription Molon Labe, which means come and take them. This was a phrase that Leonidas used as a defiant response to Xerxes when the Persian king demanded that the Spartans surrender their weapons. Near the statue of Leonidas there's a plaque with an inscription of a famous epitaph written by the ancient Greek poet Simonides of Chaos. This honours the fallen Spartans. It reads, "Stranger, go tell the Spartans that we lie here, obedient to their commands." The epitaph immortalises the self-sacrifice of the Spartans, who fought and died in accordance with Spartan law and duty. So that now concludes our look at Thermopylae, but before I go, do let me know in the comments how you like this greater focus on gameplay. And as ever, do consider dropping a like and subscribe to help the channel grow. I'll catch you all in the next one.